He's also the director of the Northland Performing Arts Center. Over there on, the hell is that on? Used to be a Sears store at Northland Shopping Center years ago.
Okay.
They have 30,000 square feet in there, and
Well, that's fun.
there's people, that, they rent it for weddings and people, different groups, and they have bands come in occasionally and people that sing, and he's the caretaker and the director of it.
Huh. All right, let's try this again. So, you came into the fire service when?
That's a good question. She won't remember. There were three of us from Jerry Flickenbaum, who used to be the chief of the fire department in Delaware County, or Delaware. And he would put on classes, and ours just happened, we were in a 3 class. Well, it used to be the juvenile lockup up north here,
Okay.
Yeah. It's in there. And that was in 19, gosh, dates, that's too far back. Anyway, I retired for 30 years. I didn't retire, I just quit. Them guys out there said I retired. I just but I was attached to it, But anymore, I don't know very many of you guys. I know you when I see your face, but if it wasn't for the name on your shirt, I probably wouldn't even recognize you. But if it was 30 years, and it was in the late 80s, I think.
What was your earliest memory of the fire service?
When I was a kid, yeah, we lived on the 16 North High Street up there, in that corner, that big stone house. My dad had purchased that and lived back there, and the fire chief, Harold Shriver, he lived on the other corner over there where Starbucks is. That was his wife's family's property. And then on the corner, audible siren on a pole. So, when that siren went off, we all usually went up to the firehouse just to watch and see what was going on. And but yeah, I know you like to play with that. But yeah, and it was the center of what went on in Dublin.
Explain that.
Well, there wasn't any civic associations, city associations, right like that. The fire puts on now, which is, if you've seen them, they're enormous. The original fireworks were started by the fire department with donations from Dr. Carpenter. He would pay for the fireworks, and the fire department would set them off, find some place where they could do it. And in fact, some of the guys just took a hay wagon and built a rig on it where they could mount the fireworks on the hay wagon. They could pull it around wherever they wanted it, see. But that's where that originated. It was just a center for kids to go, chit chat, and play badminton and volleyball. But and then George Eager, who was on the fire department, I don't know whether you've heard of George, Captain Eager, wonderful man. wonderful man. Hell of a cook. But every other Sunday, he would go up there at the firehouse in the kitchen upstairs, it was upstairs then, and cook breakfast. We just all showed up there. And he was a good man.
And he was the fire chief?
George, he was a captain.
Captain.
Yeah, yeah, he was a captain, yeah.
And what was the makeup of the fire service? All volunteer back then?
Early on, it was all volunteer. And then they hired, I think it was in the 70s, that they hired 4 full-time people. Well, Leona's brother was one of 4 full-time people. And because the fire chief, it was a, 24-hour job, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, because all the communications and everything and took place in his house here on the corner up there. And him and his wife, And when they hired the full-time guy, they raised, I don't know what kind of schedule it had, but there was a full-time firefighter in the station all the time, one. And then the rest of the crew that would be the volunteers. And the township trustees set up that, if you were going to be a volunteer, I don't know how it's set up now, but you had to spend X number of hours a month in the firehouse. But, and then it just from that started growing very, very slowly at first. And then they decided they needed it. Back then it was referred to as the Washington and Perry Township Fire Department. Because when it was formed in 1937, both townships went together in 1931. And that's the year they bought the Rio fire truck.
I heard you had something to do with the restoration of the Rio.
Yes, I would strive. I would go up there, and Shriver would be doing something, and I'd help him do it. But prior to that fire station right up here was built, the Rio and the first pumper tanker, front mount tanker, they were all kept across the river. John Thomas had a garage, sold new cars, and had a sub basement and a big ramp that went out the back to get out of there. And that's where they kept both them fire trucks over there. And, when the alarm came in, somebody had to be close to round up and get them going. But Dublin Fire Department had one of the first front-mounted pumpers for the front-mounted pump in Central Ohio. Something made it for them.
What was it like responding to calls in that Rio? Did you ever get to do that?
Yeah. Hang on the back with your life. Had a belt or something. But yeah. And then the year, I'm trying to remember. At some point in time in the late 70s, the county was able to get surplus fire apparatus. I don't know whether it was coming from the military or what, but I think every firehouse in Franklin County got a GMC 750 gallon a minute pumper tanker. Free. Everybody had one. And then, of course, I sat in the firehouse up here and we used it. But from there on, there was some conflicts between the trustees from townships. And I don't know, that's a long story, and it got pretty bitter, and I don't even wanna, I don't even wanna remember it, but, and then somehow they felt that they needed another officer from the volunteer people, so I promoted to. But,
What was the promotion process like?
the back, you, the fire organization, you know. It's like, not a club, but it was just an organization. And through that, in a voting process, I guess, they felt sorry for me or something, I don't know. Anyway. But, I got promoted to a lieutenant, and then when, the chief, a succession of chiefs, you know, through there. I think Gary Tremere was the chief then. Him and I went to high school together and went to college together over at Otterbein. And at some point in time in there, when he retired or left and went to the city of Columbus, Dick Brown took over the chief's position, and Dick Brown at that time was a full-time firefighter for the city of Columbus. And I guess, and somehow I got stuck with the captain of the bars, you know, which just the stripes on your jacket and stars and all that kind of crap. But anyway, that was no big deal to me. But it was a very close-knit group, really. And the trucks, you know, everything was taken care of by the, and if we stayed all night, we had a fire one night, and we came back, and a lot of hose was dirty, and there was 2 full-time guys on duty that night, plus 2 of the part-time. And I'm down there in the bay, and I hear them guys going upstairs, you know. I bet they think they're gonna go to bed. So I went up the stairs and turned all the lights on. And I said, "Gentlemen, your job is not finished. You don't have to wash the hose, but off that truck and refill it with dry stuff. And then the crew that comes in next day can wash it, but you're going to reload it." And somebody said, "So, well, you're just a part-time." I don't care what you think I am, but you see this gold badge on my shirt? You see any gold badge on your shirt? Let's get down there and get that damn truck loaded. You know.
What was it like back then, fighting fire?
Crazy. We always did a good job, really. Always did a good job. I remember had a house on fire down there on Dublin Road, up in the upstairs. And see, Dick Brown that's when he was fire chief, and he had the chief's car, you know. And he came down Dublin Road. Of course, most of us, we had it pretty well knocked down. But when he got out of his car, he forgot to put the parking brake on. And it just rolled right off in the ditch, see? And he could never live that down. And this is a full-time firefighter from Columbus, see? But, nothing really serious, but we have, I mean, really big ones. Because, all this was just open farmland and they didn't, back then they didn't cut the fields. If they weren't using the field, they didn't take the time to go out and cut them, they just let them go with it.
How'd you fight the large grass fires?
We ended up buying, the fire department ended up buying a four-wheel drive truck with a 150 gallon water tank on it. Front mount, you could drive it down the street and still pump at the same time. And it had the capability of getting off-road. And of course the old method with the broom and the whatever else was on the truck. But they did get a drive vehicle, which was a blessing, really.
The firefighting has changed a lot in the last few years.
Yeah.
What has been some positive changes that you've seen?
And I've seen the caliber of the fire. They've been very selective, I think. It wasn't, they just didn't drag somebody off the street. You had to find somebody would show up that really wanted to be one, and they had to kind of prove themselves that they really wanted to be one. And they've done that very successfully, and they still do, even with their full-time people they hire. See, I was a state fire instructor too, and well, I went to I don't know how many different schools. I got my instructors school up in Bowling Green one summer. And they did put us through a pretty good workout. If you're going to be an instructor, you're going to be able to do this, this, and this, and this, and this, and without any question. And he did. But it's just the caliber of people, I think. Because there's a lot of fire departments back in those days that had so much friction between people A and B that, and then they didn't function that well. But Dublin always did function. Always did.
What is some things that have changed in the culture of the fire service?
The culture of the fire service. Well, I look at it from a different point of view. When the succession of fire chiefs that we had here, a lot of them came from out of nowhere. Up north, out west, and no connection to and there was a constant chatter between the people, full-time people, basically. And somehow my name always came out. They wondered why I didn't want to be the fire chief. I told them one time, people can't afford me. See, I was teaching school, and I had 2 children, and they really weren't making that much money. The fact is, I did put an application in, and I did have to go to the fire board and go sit through an interview and all that. And then finally, they asked me what it would cost. And I said, first of all, we're going to start looking at $30,000 a year. And they just shook their head. Well, you and I are done. I said, yeah, I can't work for anything less than that. I'm making more than that teaching school. So it's just that probably was one of the, I won't say a major problem, the succession of different chiefs. Not necessarily that they didn't know anything, it's the idea that they just couldn't get along with the personnel because they didn't know them. See? And this fire department started from people that knew them probably ever since they were, could walk up to the firehouse. So that just, it changed the old, the picture of who you get and how they react. And, your fire chief now, as far as I'm concerned, is one of the better ones they've had in years.
Chief O'Connell?
Connell, yeah. Good man. Now, there's always gonna be somebody that doesn't like him. That's in every job. I taught school for 35 years. You know the reason why I retired after 35 years? I got tired of the crap from the administration. Now, there ain't trouble with any kids. Fact is, there's probably 8 or 9 of them that had been on the fire department up there. So, back in the 70s, the Columbus Division of Fire and the police were having problems with the federal government in hiring. So they appointed a person to oversee that from the outside, and he was a lawyer. And one of the first things he put in motion was, his first recommendation was that you've got these 3 career centers, and my suggestion is that you get a firefighting class in one and a law enforcement class. And it's a 2-year program. Now, when they would come out of the program, if they passed it successfully, and so on, just like anything else, that didn't give them a job with the fire department. But at least they've had the training, and if it wasn't or was not successful, or wasn't successful. And I don't know right now off the top of my head, there's probably at least 5 I can think of right now that came out of that program, not just because it was mine, but I didn't even know I was ever going to get the job, see. But there's 5 of them, I think, are fire chiefs, someplace in Central Ohio. And there's Steve Smith. He was the old man in the class, but he went through our program, and who else was up there? He just got promoted to an officer. What's his name? I can't think of that name. I'll say right now, there's probably still 6 of them up here that went through the program at the school here, because they were Columbus or surrounding school districts could petition, have go into that class, see. And it just, I did it for a lot of years.
And the school was located on Cranston?
Cranston, yeah. And the drill tower still sits over there. And it took, you probably didn't know, Waters, guy from Granby. And he was on it, and there were several other people. But it took us probably 3 or 4 years to convince the system to build us a drill tower. And they eventually did.
I heard a rumor that you had your moments of being a pretty tough instructor.
And that's another thing, when these guys would ask me, what can you do around for fire chief? Well, that's probably, right now, everything between you and I are, pretty good. But let me tell you, I was a drill instructor when I was in the Naval Reserve. Yeah. I think it will be. Well, first of all, when you come to duty in my station, you're gonna be, shoes will be shined, you will have a clean uniform on, everybody else, and you will stand ranks in the bay. And I will personally walk up and down and look at you. See? And stuff like that. And then they, I never with any of them. I mean, when something was to be done and they weren't doing it as fast as that's, but luckily they didn't get into any serious. I don't know how many times I've seen the guys drive ladders off the side of the truck and they'd be upside down. And they'd take them off and go and put them up, and they got the butt. I mean, it just is like, but it's just little things like that. But yeah.
It's intentional?
For fun, really. It's not that I didn't dislike anybody, it was just the idea that you perform the way I want you to perform. Unit officers, however wants you to perform. And if you don't want you here.
Fair enough. What was it like? Walk me through a call back early on, and what was it like to work up? Because nowadays you show up in a working structure fire, you got 400 guys and they're isolated.
Yeah.
What was it like?
Well, I can remember back when the first self-contained breathing apparatus that the township purchased. And they were on that, the big truck, the big pumper, because it had the space, and that's all we had. And you had to learn that. We never had them before. You just, when you get there, do what you can do. Use the fog spray, give you some breathing, and get out. And nobody there seriously hurt. We have a guy go through a floor into a basement, but it wasn't that big of a fire. And then they got it down in there. I do remember one fire. It was Walter Daniels and myself. I don't know who was backing us up on the line, but it was a fire. We were assisting Plain City up in Jerome, and it was a pretty good sized frame house. And Walter and I had the knob, and we're going in the door, and him and I both at the same time stopped. And we made a few communications what we can through those masks. And eventually we got somebody to get us a pipe pole. And if we'd have went another 4 or 5 feet, we'd have both been through the floor and into the basement. And it just, you poked and felt your way. And I can remember that the day I died. I could have died that day. Yeah. And it's just, like I said, we were all friends, and if we needed to hold your hand, we would hold your hand. But, back in the early days when I was on there, we didn't really have that many structure fires. If it was a mutual aid run with Plain City, or Upper Arlington, or Powell, Powell, it's not Powell, but Concord Township. And those, they still do, I think. They still have that mutual aid.
And when you say not many, because everybody says these days that things don't burn like they used to. Would you say that's true, or, I mean, when you say not many, what's not many?
Back in those days, people weren't as careless. The public weren't as careless. And they didn't do stupid things. But if they did, you could get your butt in the bind pretty damn quick. You know?
Were you guys fighting fire every week or every month, or?
Structure fire, I don't know a good figure to give you for that. I would go probably sometimes, you would go 2 or 3 months before you'd ever have a structure fire of your own, in your own district. But you may be running to somebody else. And sometimes we got the feeling that we were doing most of somebody else's work, you know?
That sentiment come up quite a bit when you went mutual aid?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you knew, you know, and they knew what they had to do, and they. But I was up in the bucket one time over in Plain City when they had one of them 3-story building that ripped and roaring, and there was 2. Can't think of the guy that was with me with the bucket up there. He died of cancer. He was a lieutenant. Yeah, he was with me up there, and we were up in the bucket, and we were thinking about, we had taken up, to open up a hole. But there was, by the time we got up there, we both were looking across the roof, and we looked at me, and I looked at him and said, I don't think we need to get on this damn roof and open the hole up, because there's a hole already there. And I said, you think we ought to go out there and walk out there? And he said, well, I don't really think so. And I said, I don't think so either. Yeah. We didn't, but by God, when we both got back in that bucket, the whole 2/3 of that roof went down, see. And those kind of fires didn't happen to us that frequently, other than with somebody else's department. Well, way back in I wasn't even on the department then. I don't even know how old I was. We had a train wreck in Hilliard, in downtown Hilliard. And 2 boxcars were burning with 50 caliber live ammo on board. And everybody was in a panic, even, you know, so we took we took the Rio over there, and there was a grain elevator that was fairly close to the tracks that had a big cistern. And that Rio sat there and pumped water for 3 days and never shut down. Them guys.
Solidly.
Yeah. And what else did, when Xenia, Ohio had that tornado, that huge tornado, the trustees approved of us sending an engine down there. But they had Danny Johnson. You do Andy Johnson. You probably heard the name though. He was about this high. See, he took, and they were down there, I think 3 or 4 days, just on standby, you know, just in case. But you just, when you get 4 or 5, you'll probably get more stories and different angles, you know, different angles.
Look forward to it.
The funniest thing out, the county fire, used to be a county association, and they put on a training thing, you know, and we This year was at the state fairgrounds. And, we acted out of the see, and get it to point A wherever they wanted it. So we had that, what truck did we have? Oh, we had a Dodge then with a big front mounted pump on it. And we were to get water out of that lake in competition with a truck company, or an engine from the city of Columbus. You know. And I don't know whether you know how they go about drafting water, but it was a circus. I think everybody on the engine carried a wooden mallet. But anyway, with that front mounted pump, see, all he had to do is pull up to the spot, throw the suction line on, pull two levers, guys are still there trying, still hooking up to get water out of the pond, see. So they didn't live that down very often. But we, there's, you know, it was like competition, but it's the way they were taught, and you didn't have to go through all that.
You learned on the job?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. We had Gary Termeer when he was fire chief. I would say he was more innovative than anybody we'd ever had before that. Because he was a firefighter in Franklin Township for a while too. And when he was chief, he did things that should have been done, you know. The first thing is that he wanted a complete map of our district water sources. And one of our guys, part-time guys, had a pilot's license. And he had a plane parked up at Delaware up there. And the township paid for the fuel. But he would take him and another guy up, and they would just fly the district and mark every farm pond on a map, you know, all them kind of thing. Every lake, access to the river was on there. And there's just things like that he did. And he got the state highway patrol straightened out a couple times. You know, back the state in those days was that we had to get the traffic moving. So if you were responding to an auto accident that involves bringing an engine, you park the engine in such a way, even if you have it cross the road this way, you block it and don't listen to anybody. The fact is, we eventually had to meet with the district patrol to get it worked out, you know. And he said, Gary just let on, if it's an emergency situation involving life or death or fire, who's in charge there? I am. No state patrol officer has tried. If they want to do something, they come to me. And I will, and things like that. I think he gained a lot of respect for doing that for the department. You know, when we came on the scene, we knew what we wanted to do it that way, and that's the way it was. But
You guys had a lot of serious auto accidents back then?
you know, let me just tell you. When I got my EMT certification, the three went to the EMT thing, you know, and got that. we were sitting, all three of us were sitting up on the steps, the old firehouse, in the back door there. And the driver came running up from his house, and he told us, how you guys get that ambulance out there and get across the river? It was an auto accident. Now, there was an auto accident, there was three fatalities, and that's the first auto accident I've ever been on, the three of us. You know, and it just went that way. You know, funny things do happen too.
What was the transition like going from all fire to fire and EMS? Was that a welcome change or unwelcome?
Were really, gung-ho about doing it. I was kind of, this way. I'd been through, when I was in the Naval Reserve, I'd been through so many different training situations like that. See that. The fact is, they even sent me to aircraft firefighting, and but I didn't particularly want to be a paramedic. I had the EMT and all that kind of stuff. Took some advanced courses. We had what?
You still?
No.
Oh.
We're just telling.
Put some noises in there I shouldn't.
That's fine.
But
Would you like some coffee or?
we're still doing coffee.
Here, I made coffee.
That's very kind of you.
You need a refill or anything?
Gary was kind of really hot on EMT. In fact is, when he was on a committee when they started the first Heartmobile in Central Ohio out of Riverside Hospital. He was on that committee, see. So he was kind of more into that, which was fine. I didn't have any problem. I just didn't want to do it that way. I mean, he took 1, 2, 3, 4 guys, and I can't remember, Larry Hall, Dick Brown, Bob Casual. Those guys were all kind of hot on the EMT side, They were good firefighters too. But he formed a team, and they went to competition all over the state of Ohio. And they brought back a few trophies. But they were not good. And one of the government officials from the state of Ohio happened to live down here off of Dublin Road, and he was able to get them some funding for their program that they were getting to be certified in. But they were good.
How long was your first EMT course?
I don't know.
No, when you went to EMT.
I would take 3 months maybe.
3 months?
Yeah. And we didn't have the same instructor all the time. We had a lady that did a lot of the instruction for it. And I think she was on that committee that Tamara was on when they formed that Heartmobile, see. And boy, did she have the information. And she could teach it. But I think it was 3 months. I don't know. What state you had to have X number of hours, And probably, I don't know, they'll still do. States gotta have their finger in it. They know nothing about it.
That's pretty normal.
Say that.
That's true. What was it like in the old firehouse?
It was funny. I'm gonna say this, and I probably should. This isn't gonna be made public.
Edit out whatever you.
That I ever knew of. But you could buy a bottle of beer. Old Chief Shriver had a cooler, an old cooler, because they had the corner up there where Starbucks is. That was his wife's family's place. In fact, the family owned up all that whole corner there up until 1961, when they finally sold it. And he had kind of he would touch radio repair thing. He could tell like he had this old pop cooler, and he thought, I think he even said something to the trustees about it, and they had some, for a dime, and get a small bottle of ale or beer out of that cooler. And the stipulation was you don't sit out in front drink on the beer, see. But there was been one guy, what the hell was his name? Billingsley? No. Anyway, he was an old Navy guy anyway. I remember one time they were going down South High Street with the Rio, and he's hanging on the back like a clown. And of course that cooler was in there, but
I heard rumors that it was quite the party hall.
yes, it really was. See, and they would put on things, and we did fish fries, and George Yeager was a chef. He was when he was in the Army. In fact is, he cooked for General Patton. That's how good he was. Yeah. He was a good chef for General Patton, and then another wasn't on the fire department, but he was, I think he was a trustee at one time. He was a veterinarian. And if you know anything about Patton, he had horses. And he took care of Patton's horses during the Second World War. So, we had a few. The idea. But George, man, he could cook the fish. They thought it was way too. But like I said,
I'll have to come in and have you teach me.
Yeah, that's just like I said about at least cook breakfast upstairs in that kitchen, and it may cost you $1, but the food you ate was great. He was a good man.
You talk about riding that Rio, holding on like a clown on me. What was that experience? Because you don't get that anymore of riding the back of the truck.
No. Don't you?
Yeah.
I for hours, but on the week I would work night shifts out on the twos out there, especially when Schmitty was on, in charge or something. And I remember he heard me engine tonight. I said, okay. And I said, hang on the back. I started laughing. I said, oh, truck. So, but what was really funny sometimes, for some reason, when I'd sleep out there at night, even though I'm asleep, I could hear the phone ring. And I would be dressed in gear and sitting on the truck before half of them guys that are assigned to that. The full-time guys weren't even close. They were still standing outside putting their boots on, see? And Smith would look at me, "What are you doing?" Well, I have this intuition. When this is before the phone would ring, I don't know what, something that would wake me up. And I'd be dressed and standing out there beside my seat on the truck, and he'd be coming around the corner still putting his pants on, see? But, yeah, you know, they started high-rise buildings and things like that. And they've had some, one of the guy, we had a mutual aid in Plain City at the Methodist Church up in Jerome. And one of the full-time guys, it was pretty smoky. And he just took the axe and went down through the church and broke every one of the stained glass windows out of it. And that didn't sit very well with, I don't even remember who the hell was fire chief then. No, look at her out there. She'll be complaining tomorrow about aching at every joint. What the hell? George Eager, what the hell did he do one time? He was going to take the window out of one of them buildings out there in Metro Place. You know, the upper stories of those windows are not breakable. He took the axe and hit the damn window, and it bounced back and hit him right straight on the. You know, it's just little things like that. And when we had more of the businesses, you know, you get a lot of false runs and so on. Some of the guys, I thought, got a little complacent about, you know, we've been in this building 16 times this month and on an alarm, and there's never anything going on. So I think it got to the point where I thought, and I was just a part-time guy, but I just thought they got a little complacent, and that got to be a spot that if I was teaching a class, you know, and I don't care what the hell I was teaching, I always use that word, becoming complacent, because they're repetitious in what you do, and sometimes you do it and there's nothing really needed to be done anyway. So therefore, you stop doing it, and sooner or later, it's going to catch you. Well, whether you recall, but it's in Memphis, Tennessee, the 4 firefighters that were killed in a high-rise that they'd been going to for years, and they never had anything, and all 4 of them were killed. And the investigation of that down there was they were complacency. So therefore, their training went, their approach in training all the engine companies and truck companies was that you don't get complacent. You don't get that. And I had up here one time, and they wanted me to, whoever put the thing on, wanted me to just talk about something. So that's what I talked about, you know. I said, how many times in your training do you take the ladder off the truck? And how many times did you moan and groan because you have to do it? But what about, and for some reason it doesn't come off like it's supposed to, or it's all up, it's all. I said, you people just, we get complacent about what we do, because we have to do this and do this and do this, and we never use it, and never use it, and never use it, and then we do use it, something screws up, something screws up.
How do you combat that?
That's a hard thing to say. Again, I think that comes from the particular individual. Sometimes the don't have that, they lack something. They want to be the firefighter. They want to ride their truck down the street with all the lights and sirens and everything on, so on and so on. But when it comes to actually doing the job, they just get kind of, And I don't know how you get away. See, I taught school for 35 years. And, part of that was that fire training class at the city of Columbus, which was something else. I went down to the schools when they were going to do that. And I didn't want to, ask them who they were going to hire. And they said, I said, well, yeah, I've got certification from the state of Ohio as an instructor. And then so on, so on, so on. And he somebody from the city of Columbus to teach the class there. So I just forgot about it. So my wife and I, my family, my brother lives in Marietta, Georgia. And we were going down there, his family, and anyway, I'm no more down there at his place for about 2 days, and I get a call from the personnel office from the city about this fire club. And that was about 3 weeks before school started. And the guy asked me, are you still interested in teaching that fire class? Well, I said, well, sure. Well, the job's yours if you want it. I said, what happened to your other out? He didn't finally figure out he didn't want anything to do with it. I said, well, I'll do it. But then eventually I talked the city of Columbus out of some spare parts and spare pieces here and there. And eventually we got our own fire truck. Because we had we had a pickup truck and I'd turn it into an engine company.
Effective trainings, even though you didn't have the resources?
I think I did, yes. Because I was very selective. I had a say in who would get in the class and who would. I had, you get guidance counselors coming from all the high schools wanting to put Joe Blow in here, and I asked a lot of questions about Joe Blow, and he's somebody that can't keep his nose clean. I said, I don't want it. Well, you can't do that. Well, I don't care what I can do or not. I'm going to tell you right now, I don't want him in there, and I'll almost guarantee you, after 6 weeks in this class, he'll be wanting out, or he'll be a person who'll be absent all the time and never show up. Because I won't really want that. And it's what?
Do you have any gray spray paint anyplace?
Gray? Gray?
Gray.
You could.
Where would it be if you had it?
Well, you got.
Oh, no. You see
What little green
that
tape?
plastic one that I was going to throw away?
Yeah.
I thought I'd just paint it gray.
Well, there might be